Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Intersectional Women webinar. I see we've got something like 20 people signed into the webinar, so welcome to you all. We're talking today about intersectionality, what that means to us, and how that's kind of expressed for each of us at Darden. Obviously, we all have different experiences, and you're only getting three experiences. I'm your moderator, and so there are many more students at Darden. This is just kind of scratching the surface, but we thought giving you guys a little bit more of an intimate look into our experiences would help you as you're making your decision, going through the application process. So we're excited to do that. You should be able to, at any point during the webinar, ask a question. We will talk about some of the questions that I prepared for the first 20 minutes, and then I'll leave the last about 10 for any questions that you guys have. So feel free at any time you have a question that pops up, just type it into the box and we'll get to them when we can. All right, so the first question that I have for my lovely panelists, if you could just introduce yourself, your name, your year at Darden, what identities you're bringing to the table today, and why you agreed to be on this webinar, apart from peer pressure.
Friendship.
And friendship.
Sure. Hi, I'm Anisha Chandra. I identify as Indian American and female. I'm a second-year student, and I agreed to be on this panel because I really like talking about intersectionality and creating space for having these types of conversations.
Hi, I'm Alison Shimamoto. I'm a second year. I'm a triple threat. I identify as a queer Black woman. I'm on this panel because I'm on this panel because I believe strongly in pushing for diversity and different voices and bringing them to the table.
Hi all, my name is Beatriz Santamaria. I'm a second year as well. I identify as a heterosexual female, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Latina. Sometimes I feel like there are so many buckets that I could be in that I think it's always good to talk about where we're at and how we're feeling in a certain environment, particularly at Darden. As you said, creating the safe space for this conversation is extremely important to your experience.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. And just so you have a little bit of background on me, my name's Christina Gonsalves. I'm a second year as well, and I identify as Jamaican, Cape Verdean, American, and female. So yeah, that's me. So the first thing we want to do is have a common understanding of what exactly intersectionality is, since we hear the term used a lot, and that's the topic of the day. So if anyone who wants to answer could share a little bit about what intersectionality means to you.
Sure. So intersectionality to me means the crossroads of my experience being female and Indian American, as I said. And a really good example to me that I've shared with classmates before is a case that we did in our first year finance class that revolved around this Indian sari manufacturer in India. And I remember in that class really distinctly that I come from a finance background pre-Darden. So I remember that I could speak about the finance points of that case. I could speak about what it means to be an Indian woman wearing saris. I could speak to different things that touch on different aspects of my identity. And so it was my decision and my thought process to think, what is my contribution going to be today in this class, and how am I going to be present at Darden in general? I think a lot of times all of us really think about that and the different things and facets that we're involved in here at Darden. And so that was just one distinct example that I remember thinking of, I bring a lot to the table, and you as prospective students are going to be bringing a lot to the table. So thinking through what your contribution is going to be at business school is really important.
Love it. Bringing it to the Darden classroom.
big on academics.
Yeah, I would just echo what Anisha said. I think for me, I don't know if many of you feel this way, but sometimes it's like you're turning on different light bulbs at different times, and so it's very much about like making that choice of when to speak. For me, I like to be active and like advocate, and so I find myself sometimes thinking like, okay, like this is a Black issue, I'm gonna talk about this, or like, okay, this is like LGBTQ plus. So kind of having that for me, I think has been really rewarding in this space and having the chance to kind of activate those different light bulbs. But it's interesting to me, at least, how all of these different facets make up my identity, in addition to the other things that like I'm interested in that go into intersectionality too.
So I actually learned the term not so long ago. I was in Puerto Rico before I came to Darden. I worked for a bank, so I was the youngest and the most junior women, I would guess. Like it was a boys' club. So I would have to tone down that side of my identity. And then the Hispanic side was, of course, not present because I was among other Hispanic people. And then it's been a switch when I came to Darden where I actually wanted to express my Hispanic side and my Puerto Rican side as part of my identity. And I think going to what you said is like turning those switches on and off. And sometimes it can be a challenge though, depending on where you are.
Yeah, definitely. I actually would love if anyone who's online kind of had a definition that they'd want to share about intersectionality. If you're feeling brave and want to type it in, we'd love to hear your thoughts too. But off of that, Bea, I think one of the next questions that I wanted to ask, and I think that addressed it, is if before Darden, in kind of the business world, you ever felt that there were parts of your identity that were easier to express or that were more rewarded than others? Thinking back to pre-Darden, or it could be your summer internship.
I can start with that. Just as I said, like my previous experience, I might come off as an aggressive person sometimes. So I would actually have to highlight that while I was working just because of the environment. And as I said, it's not necessarily good what we decide to activate or not. And I think that was my main challenge, knowing that there were some things that I still wasn't 100% happy about, but they are part of who I am. Yes, I can be a little bit aggressive sometimes, passive aggressive. But I mean, it's just, I think the major thing is getting to know all those aspects of yourself and your identity, and make the best out of them at the end of the day.
Yeah. Authenticity,
Yep.
being your full self.
All for that. Yep.
I can share an example. So, as I said, being Indian American, I grew up culturally very aware of group dynamics and really valuing like group consensus over like individual contributions. So I think that pre-Darden, I was at a company that worked in pretty much silos on every aspect of every project, every team. And I kind of saw this gap of understanding and knowledge between teams because nobody was talking to each other, which created a lot of, tension at times, but also, duplicate work or, just friction in the process in general. So I think that I was able to contribute more of that group dynamic and group consensus feel because I knew personally just from my background that it makes things a lot simpler. I like to think of it as that's something part of my identity that I was able to contribute and give to my work environment. And I think it was something that was well rewarded too.
I can think of an example. So before Darden, I worked in advertising in Philly. And so at the time during the Black Lives Matter movement, and my office was right outside City Hall. And I remember there was one particular day when there were protests outside. And I think the other thing to mention is I've always been the only Black person in my entire department in analytics. I don't know if there's any analytics people out here. But I think, so feeling that, right? Like I've really felt connected to what was going on, outside the office, but then hearing some of my coworkers' comments, like at the time, that were not sensitive to what was happening. Like, oh my gosh, like maybe they're going to start like, looting or things like that, that just kind of come from a place of not really understanding. And so I found in that moment, like a conflict of like, that part of my identity and, what should I do, and feeling connected. So, I mean, I mentioned it to my boss, and he was just like, well, just leave and go to the march. So I think for me, that was like a big learning moment where I was really hesitant about sharing that. And then when I did, it was rewarding. So I would encourage all of you to, like, throughout your careers and even at your time here at Darden, it's always better to go forward and kind of share.
And finding places where you can practice sharing, I think, is really important too, because it's different in your head than it is coming out of your mouth, which I think is like a common theme of the Darden case method classroom too, like just knowing how and when to share parts of yourself. It's a good exercise in developing your personal leadership style, I think. Yay, we have a contributor embracing the case spirit. Okay, so found it helpful to think about intersectionality as a way to bring the experiences of other marginalized demographics into perspective. Agree. It's wonderful to see a panel of thoughtful women leaders. Is that us? Thanks. Sharing their experience of what it means to be women, studying and working in a male-dominated field. It's equally important to discuss what it looks like to be a woman who may lack the class privilege that it's typical to fully participate in such settings, or a woman who is a member of a racially disadvantaged group while navigating the same space. Totally agree. Thank you so much for being part of the panel with us. I think that all of those pieces of intersectionality are important to explore, and it's part of why it's so important for the Darden classroom to be diverse in every aspect that we can think of the word, in like professional background, in your frame of thought, in your political beliefs, in your what class you're coming from, and all of those different mixes allow people to bring different things to the classroom. So you learn more from your students sometimes, or your fellow students and classmates, than you do from your professors sometimes.
True.
Don't tell them we said that.
I brought like a printed definition of intersectionality. I found out at a panel during one of our celebratory times at Darden, one Darden week. We talk a lot about all of these things and how important it is to have diverse Darden and also a diverse workplace when you get out of here. But it was started and coined by a scholar, Kimberly Crenshaw, and it was a framework for understanding how different parts of identity can intersect, and there's a crossroads that creates like their own unique experiences. So she herself was a Black feminist, and she was talking about there was a lot of literature about being Black and having that identity, and there's a lot of literature about being a woman and having that identity, but like the unique experience of being kind of those two things created something very different. So she started exploring that, and it's been something that I think feminism, the workforce, everywhere is kind of really embracing how that can shed light to how truly unique all of us are. So yeah, cool. A little maybe different path for those who are going through the application process right now. Just a little bit about why you chose Darden. At this point it's like 2 years ago, but why you chose Darden, and if you did, if you thought about any of the identities that you brought to the table while you were applying, kind of how you thought about those, if you did, during your application process.
Sure. A big reason for why I came to Darden, why I chose Darden, was the community. You'll hear that over and over again, and if you've been to multiple admissions events, you're probably tired of it by now. But I think it really does make a huge difference. I remember when I came here, I sat in on a class, and everybody knew each other. Everybody knew each other in the hallways, and I didn't see that level of connection at all the business schools that I was interested in at the beginning. And so I think that Darden really does a great job of fostering that environment and also fostering a diverse environment, which I saw through the application process. I used my application, every part and piece of it, to highlight a different side of me, and I think that the thoughtfulness that was put into the application regarding those different facets was really great too.
Nice advice too.
For me, it was academics. So coming from advertising, I remember thinking about like there were times where we wouldn't get a pitch or I didn't quite understand fully what was going on, like at the client side. And so that's why I chose Darden. I think like if you decide to come here, you'll get exposure to best in class professors. The case method too, I knew I wanted to go into consulting. And I found like I did consulting over the summer, and that exposure to the cases and running through as many as you do. I think we had our 100 case celebration in October, and we were all shocked, like, oh my gosh,
October, like so
100.
early.
Yeah.
You just got here.
Yeah. But I really feel like in that sense, making the choice for me academically, it was kind of like it was a no-brainer. The professors too, you really do have access to them. I don't know if any of y'all have visited yet, but like there's like this central quad and like all the classrooms are here and the professors are here. And it's maybe like a 5-second walk and you're always welcome to go talk to them, ask questions. So I think for me that's why I picked Darden.
Yeah, Darden was, in terms of academics, I didn't want to be lectured on. I had been working for 7 years before I came to do my MBA. So I knew I couldn't be lectured on. I wanted something a little bit more hands-on. And just the case study method here and the active learning take that Darden does is just exactly what I wanted. I also didn't want to be somewhere too cold, honestly. Like I went to Michigan for undergrad and it was extremely cold. I didn't want to go that up north. And once I visited, I stepped foot on the campus and I was just overwhelmed. It's so beautiful. The people are so nice. Through my application process, I talked with students from the other business schools that I was applying to. And I remember talking to Maria. She was from Columbia, second year at the time, here at Darden. And it was just such an easy and comfortable, informative, exciting conversation that she actually played a huge role on why I came here, just because I think she embodied what the Darden community is. And it was just like, it was really a no-brainer.
Yeah, love it.
Mhm.
I'll echo too. The community piece for me, I thought was really important. I wanted to while I was getting my MBA to have a supportive set of people around me, but I also was thinking about like recruiting, and when I went to my future office, I wanted there to be like a good group of alumni, and I think that you also can see in the Darden alumni community, if you email someone with a Darden email address, they'll get back to you like within a day every time. And that happened to me while I was at my internship. Every person who I tapped was like, show me your project, like we'll work on it together, we'll rehearse like this and that, you do this and that and you'll get the offer. And like my undergrad institution, which I won't name, is very, very different and just all my emails like kind of went out into space.
Mm.
So no shade. Cool. Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes left. So if there are any questions, get them in. This is your chance. If not, that's fine too. So another kind of like going into the at Darden space, curious what venues you feel like you're able to use to express your identity at Darden, whether it's inside or outside of the classroom. And yeah, I'll just leave it there.
I can start. I think the clubs here are really easy and good, impactful way to express your identity. I'm involved in PAD, Pride at Darden, the Black Business Student Association, and then there's also other ways that you can express parts of your intersectionality that are not like, you know, your ethnic or your orientation. So like, you know, maybe you're interested in I don't know, cooking, or like you're a big foodie, or so like there's different ways to express like who you are and the things you believe in. So I think clubs are definitely an easy way.
Yeah, I echo that. Like I thought clubs, I'm involved with the Hispanic American Network at Darden, and again, it's just a great way to like even have a support group in case you do need it. It's there for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so we've got another question. Hi all, can you talk about Charlottesville? In light of recent white supremacist rallies in Charlottesville, I find myself increasingly less interested in Darden, despite what sounds like a great curriculum, etc. Really appreciate your honest insights. Emphasis on honest, I'm sure. So yeah, anybody want to start on that? And I have my own thoughts, so I'm definitely gonna chime in.
I can talk about it. So so when I came to Darden, it was actually a week. I was here for about a week, and then the white supremacists descended upon Charlottesville. So I think it arrived. I think that it's something that kind of interestingly, right? Like it's such a dark and sad thing. But I found that for me, like as angry as I was, there were a lot of other people who also felt very similarly. I think it really brought my class together. So that's like across, you know, people who are also like members of marginalized groups, right? But it also, I think, kind of just put it top of mind. So I think diversity is a topic that like y'all have heard in your institutions where you're working, and also like as you're applying to schools. But I think a lot of institutions they do really good work. But I think to be in the thick of things and to have the national attention on the city makes it a critical point of interest. And so I think coming here, you know, at first I thought like, oh my gosh, like what did I get myself into? But I don't regret it. And I think that's because it helps me to think about like the reality of the world that we live in, but also be with other people who are maybe like learning for the first time. I mean, we have a lot of international students who are coming and they're like, well, what is this? And so it's great. It's a great way to be, you know, honestly, like to keep that in the forefront. And there are so many opportunities for you to do good work. Students do a lot of the work at Darden and involvement. And so this is a perfect place to help institute change in light of the national attention. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I just want to echo that it was a really tough time for us because we were just starting as first years. We didn't know, you know, how this was going to affect our year. And I remember that we had a town hall that I think really set the tone for the rest of the year for all of us to really take it on ourselves to make it a priority. And again, not just the people of color, not just women, but for everyone to be a little bit more cognizant and open about having these types of conversations. I think we saw that bleed through a lot of our leadership and organization classes first year, which is a core class. People got real, and I think that I think it really set the tone for us. As horrific as it was, it actually opened that conversation a lot more.
And I think there's still work to do. And I think a lot of schools have a lot of work to do, but I think this is like, if you want to come here to a place where it's top of mind and do some good work with us, that would be great.
Yeah, do the work with us. Yeah, I think you guys said it. You said it beautifully. I would echo too that it really did like elevate the conversation for us. And I think we have a lot of questions coming up. Yeah, I think that we were able to like get really real with each other. And I think it happened in our class, and I think it happened for the first years a lot too. And we had these conversations. I think it was asked on, I've done a couple of webinars, and I think it's asked on like every webinar. And so to be able to, while you're going through the application process, think about the ways that you'd want to come and be a leader here, and think about the ways that you'd want to affect change in this community, and think about how you would be having those real conversations. I think coming in with that mindset has made it so that the first years have these conversations very fluidly as well. And I hope that continues. Okay, so another one, have you seen any classmates or recent alum that have gotten into human capital or diversity and inclusion space? If so, what kind of roles and companies did they recruit with? I've seen some people who have recruited in that kind of general space. One of the consortium liaisons from last year was interested in that space. Her name's Catherine Aranda, and she's working at the Obama Foundation now. So it moved into like a little bit of a different output, but she was interested in that space. I think it might be a little bit underrepresented in business schools in general, I think.
I mean, we have the Career Development Center here, and they're gonna hold your hand and try to help you find what you want to do. There's both on-grounds and off-grounds recruiting. And if you have that particular interest, just be sure that you express it early on so they can work with you to find something that fits you.
Okay, another question. Could you speak to the fact that MBA programs are often heavily male dominated, and if or how this impacts the academic work environment? And we have 1 minute. So rapid fire answer.
I can speak to this. So I'm part of GWIB here, Graduate Women in Business, and it is one of our objectives to empower women to succeed here at Darden and beyond, but also make them resilient to the fact that they can be successful in any type of environment. So what I mean by that is like, yes, Darden and a lot of other business schools are heavily male dominated, as well as some traditional business industries, right? Consulting, banking. Just a couple. So we focus on doing a lot of programming that helps kind of bridge that gap of understanding. So one thing that we're really heavily invested on this year that our president, Jane Hannon, has done a great job of leading is the Male Ally newsletter. The Male Ally newsletter really focuses on how everyone can be a better ally to women. The second thing that Christina and I are doing as VPs of community is working on programming to kind of even the playing field for women. So we're calling it the Breaking Into the Boys Club initiative. So we do things like golf lessons, whiskey tastings, all of this that you will see in the spring when first years have more time to invest and participate in some of this programming. And I think that helps start the conversation, helps women feel more empowered to get and jump into networking circles, things like that.
Yeah. I think it's kind of tough in the classroom too, and some teachers are better than others at kind of encouraging some of the women to develop their voices, but I think it sometimes expresses itself as I think men in the classroom tend to be a little bit quicker to like raise their hands and say what their opinions are. And we have some professors who are really great at like working one-on-one with women outside and inside the classroom to get them a little more confident. Okay, I don't want to make us go too much over since I know I want to be mindful of your guys' time. The very last question is about design thinking. I will just say that Jean Lidka is one of our professors, and I'm pretty sure she like coined design thinking. Yeah, check her out. She has a couple of classes and she brings students to Barcelona. I don't think it's like necessarily very present in the core curriculum, but we do it in, at least in our marketing class, we have one case about it. And then after you're done with the core, you can definitely explore that a little bit more. Yeah, so thank you all for coming out here and joining. And you were a great group because you asked us questions and you participated in the beginning. So thank you for that and being a part of this experience with us. And thank you to the panelists.
Good luck to everybody
Bye.
applying.
Thank you.
Bye.